The Frequency of the Hollow. Part 1. The Graveyard Shift. Isolation has a sound. Most people think it's silence, but they're wrong. True isolation is the hum of a failing fluorescent bulb. It's the creak of settling timber in a building 50 miles from the nearest paved road. It's the low, rattling breath of the wind, trying to find a way inside. My name is Elias, and for the last 3 years, I've been the midnight voice of KBRV, a tiny AM radio station perched near the summit of Mount Vale. The station was a relic, a wooden cabin strapped to the side of a mountain, surrounded by hundreds of miles of dense, unforgiving pine forest. My job was simple: play old jazz records, read the local weather reports for the handful of truckers brave enough to take the mountain pass, and keep the transmitter from freezing. It was an easy job. Lonely, but easy. Until the blizzard of 1998. The Weather Service had predicted a mild dusting, but by midnight, the snow was falling so thick it looked like television static against the windows. The wind howled with a localized fury, shaking the heavy glass of the broadcast booth. Inside, it was warm. The air smelled of burnt coffee, old paper, and the metallic ozone tang of the mixing board. I leaned into the microphone, sliding the fader up. You're listening to KBRV, the voice of the Cascades. It's 2:15 in the morning, and it looks like Mother Nature is throwing a bit of a tantrum out there. To anyone driving on Route 9, pull over. The roads are freezing over. Stay warm, stay safe, and let the smooth sounds of Coltrane keep you company. I hit the button, queuing up the track, and leaned back in my worn leather chair. The red On Air sign glowed above the heavy soundproof door. Beyond the glass, the station's small lobby was swallowed by shadows, illuminated only by the faint orange glow of the space heater. I was entirely alone. At least, that's what I thought. Part 2. Dead Air. At 2:43 a.m., the jazz record skipped. It wasn't a vinyl scratch. We had upgraded to digital files years ago. It was a digital stutter, a sharp, grinding ch-ch-ch-ch-ch that looped infinitely. I sat up, frowning, and tapped the computer monitor. The software had frozen. I reached for the emergency backup, a CD player loaded with a generic instrumental mix, and slid the fader up. Nothing. The monitors in the studio kicked back nothing but a low, vibrating hum. I checked the transmitter readings. The needles were buried in the red. The signal wasn't dead. It was overloaded. Something was broadcasting on our frequency, overpowering the station's feed. I put on my heavy studio headphones, wincing as a wave of harsh static hissed through the cups. I reached for the dial to turn it down, but my hand froze. Beneath the static, there was a voice. It was impossibly faint, buried under layers of white noise, but it was rhythmic, deliberate. I turned the gain up, pressing the headphones tighter against my ears, squeezing my eyes shut to focus entirely on the audio. Cold. So cold. The door. Open the door. The voice was ragged, wet. It sounded like someone speaking with a mouth full of freezing water. I shivered, a chill tracing its way down my spine. It had to be a ham radio operator, someone trapped in the storm whose signal was bleeding into our tower. I grabbed the mic, overriding the system. This is KBRV. To the voice on this frequency, I hear you. Do you need assistance? Over. The static hissed, rising in pitch like a boiling kettle. Then, it snapped to absolute, crystal-clear silence. Elias. I dropped the headphones. They clattered against the mixing board. My heart hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The voice hadn't just said my name, it had sounded exactly like me. Part 3. The Echo. I stood up, backing away from the console. The studio suddenly felt impossibly small. The walls seemed to lean inward. I stared at the microphone, the headphones, the blinking lights of the soundboard. "Who is this?" I demanded to the empty room, my voice trembling. I tentatively picked up the headphones again, holding one cup to my ear. "Elias, it hurts. My fingers are black. The frostbite, Elias. Why did you lock the door?" "This isn't funny," I whispered into the mic. "If this is a prank, it's a federal offense to hijack a broadcast signal. I'm calling the police." I reached for the landline on the desk and pulled the receiver to my ear. The line was dead. No dial tone. Just a hollow, empty quiet. "They can't hear you, Elias," the voice on the radio hissed. It was louder now, more authoritative, yet still carrying that wet, suffocating gurgle. "Nobody can hear you. You aren't broadcasting to the mountain. You're only broadcasting to me." "Who are you?" I shouted, slamming my fist on the desk. "Look out the window, Elias." My breath hitched. I slowly turned my head toward the large, double-paned window that looked out into the parking lot. The security light outside swung wildly in the wind, casting erratic, strobe-like flashes across the swirling snow. At first, I saw nothing, just the white fury of the blizzard. But then, as the light swung back, catching the edge of the tree line, I saw it. A figure. It was standing at the edge of the woods, completely exposed to the storm. It wasn't wearing a coat. In fact, through the blinding snow, it looked like it wasn't wearing much of anything. Its skin was a pale, impossible gray, blending in with the ice. The security light swung away, plunging the lot into darkness. When it swung back, the figure was closer. 50 yards. "I'm so cold, Elias, but I'm coming inside now." Part 4. The paranoia panic, raw and primal, flooded my veins. I bolted out of the broadcast booth, slamming the heavy soundproof door behind me, and sprinted through the dark lobby to the front entrance. The station had a heavy steel door equipped with a deadbolt and a chain. I checked the lock. It was engaged. I backed away, panting, staring at the handle. Thump. A heavy, wet impact struck the other side of the steel. I jumped, stumbling over a lobby chair. Thump. Thump. It wasn't a knock. It sounded like someone throwing their entire body weight against the metal. I scrambled back to the broadcast booth, my sanctuary, the only room with a lock on the inside. I threw myself in, locked the heavy wooden door, and collapsed into the leather chair. I was hyperventilating, the air feeling thin and useless in my lungs. The studio monitors suddenly crackled to life without me wearing the headphones. The voice was booming now, echoing off the acoustic foam of the small room. "The steel is cold, Elias, but it's rusting. Everything breaks down eventually, even you." "Leave me alone!" I screamed at the console. "Turn around." I froze. Every muscle in my body locked up. The hairs on the back of my neck stood at attention. The voice hadn't come from the monitors. It had come from the headphones resting on the desk. But the sound was so clear, so localized, it sounded like someone standing directly over my shoulder. I didn't want to look. Every survival instinct screamed at me to close my eyes, to cover my ears, to pretend I was anywhere else. But slowly, inevitably, I rotated the chair. The small window in the soundproof door, looking out into the lobby, was fogged up. Not from the outside in, from the inside out. Someone, or something, had breathed on the glass from the lobby. A hand slammed against the glass. I screamed, pushing my chair backward until it hit the wall. The hand was grotesque. It was human in shape, but the flesh was blackened, necrotic, the fingernails peeled back and bleeding black sludge. A face pressed against the glass, smearing the condensation. It was my face. Part 5. The Breach. It was me, but distorted, as if reflected in a funhouse mirror. The eyes were sunken, dark pits completely devoid of white. The jaw hung slack, unnatural, unhinged at the side. The lips were blue and cracked, stretched into a wide, agonizing smile. "You took my warmth, Elias," a voice echoed, Not from the speakers, but vibrating through the very floorboards of the room. Now, I'm taking yours. The doorknob began to violently rattle. The heavy wood groaned under immense pressure. I looked around frantically for a weapon. I grabbed a heavy metal flashlight from the emergency kit, gripping it so tightly my knuckles turned white. Crack. A spiderweb fracture appeared in the reinforced glass of the door. Crack. The fracture spread. The thing on the other side wasn't hitting the glass, it was just pressing its forehead against it, pushing with impossible, relentless force. "God, please," I whimpered, backing into the corner, raising the flashlight like a club. The glass shattered inward, a shower of cubic shards raining onto the carpet. A blast of freezing air rushed into the studio, air that shouldn't have been in the lobby. It smelled of ancient ice, wet earth, and rotting meat. A long gray arm snaked through the broken window, reaching for the interior deadbolt. I lunged forward, bringing the flashlight down on the wrist with all my strength. I heard a wet snap, like a dry branch breaking underfoot, but the arm didn't flinch. It didn't pull back. The hand simply twisted at a sickening angle and flipped the lock. The door swung open. The lights in the studio blew out, leaving me in absolute darkness, save for the pale, sickly glow of the mixing board. It stepped into the room. It was tall, too tall, its head scraping the acoustic tiles on the ceiling. It moved with a jerky, stop-motion twitch, its limbs bending in ways joints were never meant to bend. I tried to scream, but the freezing air in the room seized my lungs. I couldn't breathe. The cold was radiating off this thing, a physical weight that pressed me against the wall. It slowly turned its head, the unhinged jaw swaying. It looked at the mixing board. It looked at the microphone. Then, it looked at me. Part 6. Sign off. It didn't attack me. It didn't tear me apart. Instead, it walked past me, leaving a trail of freezing black sludge on the carpet. It sat in my chair. It reached out with its broken, twisted hand and smoothly slid the fader up. It leaned into the microphone. When it spoke, the voice didn't come from its throat. The voice manifested directly inside my head, a booming, deafening roar of static and despair. You are listening to KBRV, the frequency of the hollow. We are broadcasting to the lost, the freezing, and the forgotten. Do not adjust your dial. We are coming inside now. The creature turned its hollow eyes back to me. The jaw snapped shut, reforming into a perfect replica of my own face. It smiled, a genuine, warm, human smile. The cold in the room finally overtook me. My vision blurred, the edges of the world turning black. The last thing I heard before I lost consciousness was the sound of my own voice, humming a smooth jazz tune, broadcasting a warning to a world that was entirely unprepared for the storm that was coming.